Number 1. Allie. You said you were looking for scary pride stories because you hadn't got any the previous year. Well, I do have one, but it might seem a little weird to you because I'm a straight guy who's had a pretty scary story that happened to him during Pride. I was visiting with some friends during Pride. They lived in Philly, and I flew in for a few days. They tried to get me to stay at their house, but there were already others staying there. I didn't like to be in a crowded house, so I opted to get myself a hotel room so I could have some space to myself. The first night, I went out partying at the clubs with them. There were so many people around that first night, and I was having a great time. It was extremely late at night when we all decided to head back to go to sleep. But even then, in the middle of the night and early morning, the partying was still going on, very strong. I knew the city well enough that I could make it back to my hotel on my own. Plus, it was so nice out that I walked and turned down a ride to the hotel from my friends. I really wasn't worried about anything happening to me. When I got to a block away from the hotel, I walked by an alley that could get me there even faster. I looked at the alley. My concerns are not probably what you are thinking about, though. I wasn't scared to go through the alley, but I wondered how absolutely filthy it must have been. The cleanliness was much more of a worry than anything else, but I decided to do it anyway. During the walk home, the drinking and celebrating had begun to catch up with me. I was looking forward to crawling into bed. As I was walking by a dumpster, I suddenly felt a strong sting of pain. I stumbled a bit and I fell down to one knee, but I was able to prevent myself from falling worse. I glanced over at the dumpster, though. Dumpsters aren't really that high off the ground, as I'm sure you know, but there was a person under the dumpster. It couldn't have been a comfortable fit either, as he looked like he was smushed under there. However, he had a knife in his hand that he was swinging in my direction, and he had the scariest looking smile on his face, too. It was the look of someone who had definitely lost his mind. He had only grazed me with the knife, thankfully. I was able to get up, and he wasn't able to pull himself out from under the dumpster. So I got up, and I hurried out of the alley as quickly as I could. I called the police anonymously and told them what had happened. I really wasn't worried about the guy. I felt sure that he had put himself in that position, but I wanted to make sure that no one else would get hurt walking down that alley. Number 2. Parade. I once lived in a really turbulent relationship. I was really young at the time and I was insecure. I just wanted to be in a relationship. So at the age of 19, I entered a 3-year relationship that involved a lot of fighting and arguing. But we moved in together, and it happened to be a mess of a relationship. Rick wouldn't let me do much of anything. He was really against me even having friends. One day, when I went to play basketball with the bass player of Chevelle, yes, I'm serious, we were friends before he got famous, and my boyfriend destroyed our apartment. He broke some Star Trek models we had, and he actually cut up my Kermit the Frog plushies, of which I had a lot of. It was really scary, and it made it hard for me to leave him. During the last year of our relationship, things were really falling apart. I was finally trying to pull away from him, although he made it very difficult all the time. He liked spending all of our time together, working at the same place together, and spending all of our time away from work together as well. I was 22 years old, and summer was coming up. I wanted to go to the Gay Pride Parade in Chicago because I had never been to one before. Immediately he told me that I couldn't go. Rather than talk about it or ask questions why I wanted to go, he told me distinctly that I could not go. That was sort of indicative of our relationship, though. I told him that I was going to go, despite him not wanting me to. He insisted I wasn't going to. What were his reasons for me not wanting to go? Well, he thought of the Pride Parade as nothing more than a meat market. He thought everyone who went there only went because they wanted to find people to have sex with. Strangely enough, this description really fit what kind of person Rick was anyways. So I was sure that there were people who did this, but still, I wasn't convinced that it was most people. It was also not why I wanted to go. I wanted to get out and show that I was proud of who I was. It became a moment of contention for us for a few weeks as time went by. He seemed to think I would eventually come around to his way of thinking, but I knew that I wouldn't. I was tired of him doing this to me. There was no compromise in our relationship. I had to do things 100% the way he wanted me to. The few times in the past that his controlling nature forced me to want to leave him, he would tell me that he would kill me before he would ever let me be with someone else. And yeah, I know I should have left him when he said that, but I really had nowhere to go. Anyway, it all came to a head a week before the parade. I put in for the following Monday off of work so I could sleep and rest the day after the parade. When I told him, sitting in our living room, he told me that I wasn't going. I simply told him it was my choice. It was not his choice, and I was going to go. Well, he jumped out of his seat. He stood above me in my seat, leaning over me. He started shaking his finger in my face. He was yelling at me, telling me that I wasn't going to go, and his finger kept hitting my nose as he yelled at me. When he was done, he stormed into our bedroom and slammed the door. Well, I remained in my seat for a few moments, shaken by what had just happened. But then, finally, after 3 years of putting up with him controlling me, I got up and stormed over to the bedroom door. I slammed it open so hard that it made a hole in the wall where the doorknob hit it. I told him to his shocked face that if he ever got in my face like that and touched my nose with his finger, I would end him. Keep in mind, this is the guy who several times told me that he would kill me before letting someone else have me, and I had never said anything like that to him. But, as I would find out later, what set him off was, he said I had threatened to kill him, so he jumped up and began punching me. I had been in a lot of fights in my life, including with my older brother, who was an absolute beast. I was actually astonished how he couldn't punch at all. None of his punches hurt. When he was hitting me, I actually began laughing at him because I realized I was intimidated by this guy for 3 years, and my little sister could hit harder than him. Well, laughing at him while he was punching me didn't help. He got angry. For Christmas that year, I had gotten him a framed glass picture. It was a 101 Dalmatians picture. Well, he took it off the wall and broke it over my head, glass side first. The glass shattered all over me and all over the floor. I stood there. I had not punched him or retaliated in any way up to that point. I told him I was leaving, and if he valued his health, he had better not follow me. Well, it was evening and dark out. I went out, not knowing where I was going. We were in my hometown, not his. Because of his tendency to not want to go anywhere, he never got to know my hometown. It is important later to know this. It didn't take long of me looking behind me to see that he eventually came and was following me. I was no longer scared of him hitting me, because he obviously couldn't hurt me that way. But I was still afraid for some reason. An idea occurred to me. I turned a certain way and was walking downtown. I made a couple turns, and he kept following me. I eventually turned into the police station of the really small town and explained to them quickly what had happened and that my boyfriend was following me. The officer saw the pieces of glass that were still in my hair, and right then, my boyfriend walking by the front of the building. He asked quickly if that was him, and I told him yes. The cop quickly ran out of the station, telling me to remain there. I saw my boyfriend stop, and the cop yelling at him. I couldn't make out what the cop was yelling, but he eventually had to tackle my boyfriend to the ground. Next thing I know, he was joined by a couple other officers. He must have called them while he was cuffing my boyfriend. After a while, one of them came in and told me that he had been carrying a kitchen knife on him when the other officer went outside. He also refused to drop it, so he was arrested. Unfortunately for him, he didn't know anyone around us who could bail him out, and his parents lived hours away. There was more than enough time for me to get a restraining order on him and move his possessions out of the apartment. I was able to get him removed from the lease too when the landlord found out what had happened. I have seen him a few times since then, but never spoken to him. He didn't get into as much trouble as you might think. He hadn't attacked me with the knife, but proving that he had hit me with the picture was quite easy, and he admitted it anyway. He had 6 months in jail, and immediately went back to live with his parents. I went to the parade that year too, and had a really good time. Number 3. Mitch. I had been talking to this guy online for a while. We weren't really planning on dating, or at least I didn't see it as having a relationship potential. I do realize that there are times when someone might want a relationship, but the other person didn't realize it. Well, his name was Mitch, and I definitely do not talk to him anymore. But let me explain. One day, he wanted to meet up with me for the first time. I told him I couldn't, because I was going to the Pride Parade with my friends. He got extremely pissed off at me about this. He was one of those guys who really hated Pride, and I don't really care if people don't like it. I mean, we are all our own people. So I obviously didn't invite him to come and go out with my friends and me, because he made it clear how much he hated it. On the morning of the parade, my friends and I were planning on getting there really early so we could get a good spot. I was getting ready when I heard a knock at my front door. I sent a text to my friends, assuming they had come to pick me up early. However, they told me that they had barely just gotten out of bed. It wasn't them at the door. I didn't know who could be knocking at the door. I suddenly got a text message from Mitch asking me why I wasn't answering the door. I froze in fear because not only had I not been expecting to see him that morning, but I had never told him where I lived. I had no idea how he had found my home. And before anyone wonders, no, he didn't have my last name, and my only phone was not a landline. I didn't answer the text right away. I was too much in shock and wondering what was going on. None of that seemed to matter to Mitch, however. He began banging on the door very loudly and calling for me to answer. At the time, I was very lucky that I kept all the curtains closed in my home. There was no way he could see that I was there, so I lied and sent him a message telling him that I was already out at the parade with my friends. He knew I was going, so I asked him why he had come over that morning. He responded, "I was gonna convince you not to go." It chilled me seeing those words. There was definitely something wrong with this guy. Even worse, he stayed on my porch for about half an hour, sitting there, as if he expected I would come home at any moment. Finally, he got up and left. I never let him know that I was there that day. I also really stopped talking to him. I just avoided his calls and messages. And fortunately, he never showed up again. Number 4. I got stalked and catfished. Firstly, I don't want my name or country attached. I'm a guy from outside the US and I'm gay. That's as much as people need to know about me personally. So in 2012 to 2014, I was pretty busy in some online activist scenes, and I wasn't the most coherent or effective, I'll admit that. I made a lot of mistakes back then, and argued with people I shouldn't have. I will fully admit to screwing up. I was in my early 20s, and unlearning a lot of bad things I've been taught about people like myself, who weren't straight. So I was pretty loud, without any idea how to be better at internet safety. I used to get a few nasty messages on Tumblr now and then from bigots, but I largely ignored them because there will always be stupid people who feel the need to say slurs, and I could just block them. Unfortunately, though, there were a lot of them, and even if I turned off people's ability to message me anonymously, they just make new accounts, or they'd share my posts with some horrible comments. If I posted selfies, I get someone calling me ugly or commenting on my weight, along with homophobic slurs. I remade my account in the hopes it would put people off, at least for a while. I kept up with my old friends and went back to posting just like I had before, because I'd always been told that bullies get bored eventually if you ignore them. I learned the hard way that doesn't actually work. While the hate on Tumblr wasn't that big of an issue, since I could just ask people for outside contact info, it went to real life in 2014. I started getting weird messages on Grindr, which, as anyone who's familiar with it will tell you, is location-based. I just assumed it was the usual thing of people being rude assholes for no reason, because that's very common on platforms where people don't face any consequences for their actions, just like a guy in a haunted house. I just thought little of it beyond that. It didn't stop with just faceless accounts telling me that I should give up or calling me ugly. It went beyond even that. One night, I got a message from this account that didn't have a profile picture. The guy seemed nice enough and eventually sent me a blurry photo I thought was him, just some random person I didn't recognize. He told me his name was Steve. I was bored enough to go along with it, and he sent me an address to go to. Bear in mind this was also after dark, and I am very aware now that going out to an unfamiliar place in the dark without telling anybody where is unwise. But I wanted the attention, so I went to the apartment building and pressed the buzzer for the unit that he told me was his. Some woman answered and said, "There's no one named Steve there." I double-checked the address on my phone and the location I was at, thinking I must have misread it, but no, I was exactly where he told me to be. I tried texting him and saying he sent me to the wrong address, but I didn't get a response back at all. I waited a few minutes and then I just walked back to my place. I thought it was really weird and a horrible prank meant to embarrass me at the time, but I shrugged it off. I continued getting harassed for some time after the fact, and eventually I worked out why I was being harassed. You see, some of these assholes aren't very subtle. They sent me things with the exact content as the messages on my blog, so I realized I'd been doxxed, and I stopped using Grindr most of the time. Now, that might not sound very scary, but I'm about to clarify. I live in a place that's somewhat conservative, despite same-gender marriage being legal. There's people who find gay or bi men on apps like Grindr, pretend to be themselves gay or bi men who are interested, and lure them to isolated places, especially at night, with the intention of attacking us. If I'd been really unlucky on that night, where the person or people who had lured me out, I might not be here today, at least not without life-changing injuries. Hey all, Killer Orange Cat here. As always, I want to thank all my paid Patreon members, starting with my two VIPs, Chiamerah Cat and Pixie Upper 8. Also thank you Heidi H, Chronic J, Stinky News, EricaOdd, Tracy Sellars, Kelli Clark, and Broken Angel. I hope that people are happy with this video. I know I did not get to do a Pride video last year, and I'm sure you guys are used to me doing them. I just didn't get any stories. Fortunately, when I put out that I was doing one this year, I did get a few stories, so I hope that you all enjoyed them. For those who aren't into those sort of stories, I definitely understand, but please also understand that it's nice for everyone to be able to have their stories told as well. If you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, and you'd like to be, please hit the subscribe button and the bell to be notified of new content. Leave me a message, which I'll try to get back to. And consider sharing the video with someone you think might enjoy it. If you have an original story you want narrated on Killer Orange Cat, please send it to the address included in the description. And now, I'd like to thank all my free Patreon members: Anthony Bowers, Remi, Venikins, Rose Metro, Woofer McWooferson, Cindy Cleveland, Vanapira Rayne, William H., Alien Unicorn 13, Kathryn Lynch, The Bama Guy 334, Michael Vasquez, Bonnie Lynn, Collet Bond, Krista Pike, Prince UVA, HF Creations, Bonnie Gibbs, Linda Moore, DJ Lira, Evil Black Cat, Lori Hicks, Lisa Herman, Krystal Robin, Hillbilly 13, RhettSchall, John Tull, Baby and Baby, Sherry Hubbard, and Vina Waldren. But in the meantime, please make sure to not forget to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.